Afternoon, everybody, and welcome all newcomers to my channel. Yeah, I have a microphone and a shirt today because we're back to, my regular content that I talk about. Although I'll do an occasional video about advice for prospective models every now and again, considering I can talk about what it's like to get in the industry twice and the differences between the 2000s and today. Things have changed for the better in a lot of ways, but uh, welcome everybody who's new to the channel again. A comment I got on the channel a few days ago that sparked a question within me. This person was asking, what are the causes of narcissistic abuse? And that's something that's heavily debated. So I had my own thoughts on it, but I decided I was going to do my due diligence and, do a little research from actual professionals in the mental health field to see what the consensus is about the causes of narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. And the consensus that I found is that the mental health community, for the most part, believes that there are four possible causes for narcissistic personality disorder. So somebody with NPD can either exhibit, it could be one of these four causes or a combination thereof. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The four possible causes of narcissistic personality disorder. So within the mental health community, I have read that it's widely accepted that multiple causes can play a role whether or not someone develops narcissistic personality disorder in their lifetime. And the first of these four aspects, is genetics. So one of the theories is that studies suggest that genetics and common personality traits found within that genetic line, like entitlement and grandiosity, can be inherited. So, if somebody's father thinks he's a prince, there might be a chance that his son thinks he's some kind of prince. We're the royal family of East Goshen because we've been here 100 years. And, once upon a time, 100 years ago, one of our relatives was a big shot. So that means the rest of us are the big shots till the end of time. Thought we fought a war in this country, not to have that system. And it worked. And, we had a good system for a while until it descended in the oligarchy, but that's a topic for another day. If I start ranting, I won't stop. So in the case of genetics, parents with NPD won't definitively pass those narcissistic traits down to their children. But if you've noticed from a lot of narcissistic abuse channels, a lot of times people like me that discuss narcissistic abuse also, it's a lot of times that those narcissists, our parents, were subjected to narcissistic abuse. Now, I can honestly say, my mother was a borderline. That was certainly not the case with her parents. My grandmother was, everybody loved my grandmother. She was, a textbook ENFJ. And best I can tell, my grandfather was an INFJ. He died when I was a toddler, but the letters he left and all the stories and the journals and how I've been told my whole life how I'm exactly like him. And, he was kind of a loner in his mannerisms and stuff like that and his intuition. It sounds pretty dead on for what I can gather. But in a lot of cases of narcissistic personality disorder, it is said that those that come from narcissistic parents are predisposed to those traits. And the reason that this is, yeah, it's genetics, but it's also nurture too, in my opinion, because narcissistic traits are normalized in that. When you're really young, you look to your parents to see what's right and wrong, what's normal. And if you have a parent who's narcissistic, those traits are going to be normalized even when they're abusing you. I certainly normalized my mother's borderline behavior for a while because I knew no different. Yeah. Which leads me into the second point. Parenting, the nurture aspect. So a wide range of parental behaviors have been linked to studies to narcissistic personality disorder, and some parenting practices such as neglect, maltreatment, and abuse are actively harmful and can lead to narcissistic personality disorder. There's also the other side of the coin for that. spoiling a kid, um, telling them they can do no wrong, telling them they're perfect, that they're the best at everything. This is especially true in what they call only child syndrome, because an only child does not grow up with sibling rivalry by definition. And sometimes in that dynamic, that only child gets all the attention. They're told how great they are constantly, and they expect everybody else in their life to always have them in the spotlight, and they will assume that they're the best that's ever been in whatever they're doing, and that they have epic entitlement. I've seen it a few times. So I think there's a correlation between only child syndrome and narcissism too, if indeed the parents of that only child also exhibit narcissistic traits, even if they're not like full on diagnosable, meet the DSM criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, but exhibit, say 3 or 4 of the traits. I think it's 5 is the criteria for the DSM. So overprotectiveness from parents can lead to increased risks for both grandiose and vulnerable behavior, rebellion kind of thing. So parenting, the nurture aspect, is a big cause of it. And number 3, this is perhaps the biggest one for me, because I think, in my opinion, it explains the prevalence of narcissism, be it actual narcissistic personality disorder or just narcissistic tendencies and behavior in the area when I grew up. And perhaps, why a lot of people say that there's a prevalence of narcissistic traits and narcissistic behavior amongst white middle class baby boomers. And that is environmental. It's the environment somebody grows up in, and it might also lead to a potential increase in NPD in early adulthood. The study suggests that narcissistic traits might be more common in individualistic cultures. And again, this ties in to, the theory. And there's a book written about it by Bruce Cannon Gibney called A Generation of Sociopaths, How Baby Boomers Betrayed America. And in that book, he discusses the largely homogenous upbringing of white middle class boomers, when they were children, and the environment that they grew up in being the golden age of economic expansion. Hey, that light works again. So in that book, he says that's what led to that generation, the ruling class, the white ruling class who eventually got into positions of power, and how they betrayed the American dream that their parents fought so hard for ideals of greed is good and whoever dies with the most toys wins. Basically, the Reagan Revolution and the corporatization of the American government and the descent into oligarchy, why we're in this neoliberal nightmare. And the same can be said in the UK too, because essentially the same thing happened with Thatcher. So, yeah. But, we're Americans, so we have to do it bigger and better, and we're a little worse off for it. I know, a lot of things are messed up in the UK, but that NHS is still there. You won that fight. So environmental can also be normalization of certain behavior amongst their peers. And if all their peers are normalizing that behavior at a certain age, this can also lead to further narcissism, especially, and this is why I like this one so much, in a community where those peers stay connected. So if narcissistic behavior is being normalized, say among, young adults, like university age, right, let's say 18 to 25, and instead of like in some communities where that community of young adults disperses and moves out, if that community all stays in the same place and all rises in the positions of power, and a lot of them exhibit narcissistic traits, the others will be enabling that behavior, enabling those traits because of, I grew up with him. Oh, it's different when they do it. It's not, well, they always did that. Things like that. So because those traits had been enabled for so long, and the history between that group of people who have been so close and in that same small community for so long, they're going to normalize and look the other way on that abusive behavior. And then it becomes not only normalized, but institutionalized. And, narcissists who have power then love to defend that power and hate anything that challenges their status quo. just kind of what's going on in Chester County. But if you're not from the area, it's tough to explain. Other people say it too. It's not just me. Not crazy. I've been tested. I did. The fire department had to be tested at Lynn. And number 4 is biology. Recent research identified biological factors that may develop narcissistic personality disorder, and it leads to certain oxidative stress and molecular imbalance that can strain the body. So there's been brain scans that have been done with people with NPD, and they tend to have less gray matter in parts of their brain that are associated with empathy. So there is, some neuroscience behind this too, through brain scans. Neuroscientists have also found a link between narcissistic personality disorder and variations in prefrontal brain structure. More research must be done in the future, but many believe that there is a correlation there. Yeah. So those are considered the 4 factors of what leads to narcissistic personality disorder. Now, this is specifically narcissistic personality disorder. It's not borderline or histrionic or the other cluster B personality disorders. It is important to say that there are risk factors that also play into narcissistic personality disorder. For instance, men are more likely to be diagnosed with NPD than women. Now, on the other side, women are more likely to be diagnosed with BPD than men. Bottom line, narcissistic personality disorder diagnosis is linked to parenting styles, experiences, cultures, biologic factors, and what behaviors have been normalized. So I hope that answers that question. That's about the best I can do, just being some guy in his basement on YouTube. But nonetheless, each of those are interesting, and I believe, in my experiences with various narcissists, I have exhibited anecdotal evidence that leads to each of those causes. So if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Click the notification buttons to be alerted of future videos, because I'm not really recommended because I'm bad and small and nobody. And if you find my channel helpful and would like to support it, there's the super thanks button, or, the links to send a tip via Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal in the About section of the channel, right there with my official Instagram and my professional modeling portfolio, if, you want to make sure that I'm not lying about my experiences in the modeling industry. So, welcome to the channel. If you're new again, please check out my playlist and older channels. Hopefully you find some of my older work at least entertaining, if not enlightening, because these videos exist to help people, and I hope this one and all the others have been helpful.